I only came inside the broker's office, striding towards the desk, reaching out and pulling out the chair to sit down. Lin Fan Evening has been waiting for a long time. I smiled and reached out to take it, lowered my head, and seriously surveyed the performance contract. I did not expect that this is a singing competition program. The program is called King of Masked Singers. I was a little surprised and looked up at Lin Fan Evening. With a puzzled look on my face, I asked, "Want to take part in this program?" Lin Fan Evening hugged his arms and leaned back in his seat easily. "That's right. As long as you contest the finals and enter the semi-finals, then I'll be your manager." So after I carefully examined the contract, I was about to sign it when Lin Fan Evening suddenly spoke up and interrupted me. I raised my head in confusion, staring straight at her serious expression, thinking that I had missed something. Perhaps there were unfinished words, but Lin Fan Evening lowered her head and did not look at me. Just action paused for a moment, gently deducted the table, opened his mouth to remind me, "Have not asked for the remuneration." I heard this sentence whispered and laughed. Thought it was something important. I will not be at ease at all. Just a decisive attitude to sign the word. Lin Fan Evening saw me this attitude as quite surprised. Then she will no longer say more, reached out and took the contract. The two people very quickly reached an agreement. Dark clouds rolling, lightning and thunder, a flurry of rain from the sky. The Emperor's mansion stands quietly in the rainy night. I really did not expect to just get off the bus. Actually, so heavy rain raised his hand to cover the top of his head. Walking in a hurry towards the mansion, I just walked into the door of the house. I suddenly heard a roar of anger. "If I can't find her, I will throw you one by one into the sea to feed the sharks." I hurriedly turned my head to look, only to see the servants were trembling with fear in the hall, scared and lowered their heads. No one dared to make a sound. Seeing this scene in front of me, I deeply feel that the situation is not good. Couldn't help but frown and spit out. Fourth brother was really angry, but fortunately she had made enough preparations. She pretended to be angry and walked towards the house in big strides, constantly wiping the rainwater from her face. Why is this rain so annoying? It actually falls when it says so. His face instantly changed from sunny to cloudy. Black clouds were generally low, staring at me without saying a word, looking very unhappy. But when the servants saw that I was back, they all breathed a sigh of relief and finally put their hearts down. This little ancestor is finally back. Dai Lin's face eased down, lowered his head, and asked me with some doubt if this was for him. I nodded my head with a serious expression. I raised my hand and spoke excitedly. In order to find this gift, I had to go to a dancing shops before I bought it. Open it and take a look. Dai Lin heard this. For a moment his expression was a little touched. I did not think that it was actually for him to go and pick out a gift. And it was raining so heavily outside. I looked up with a serious look and stared at him, with fresh raindrops still hanging in my hair. Straight was smiling gently at Dai Lin. In the next second that I didn't expect, Dai Lin suddenly fished in his big hand and picked up my whole person, very easily in his arms. I was just at a moment, unexpectedly to the shock. Fear of open mouth let out an exclamation of surprise. Looked panicked staring at him. Then walked to the living room sofa, holding me in a relaxed posture to sit down. I looked up at him with a confused face. I do not know what this is trying to do. The servants were so scared by these words that they couldn't stop shivering. A chill ran down the back of their backs. They woke up in a flash and acted nervously. Dai Lin wrapped the blanket tightly around me and took a handkerchief to gently wipe the rainwater from my face and asked gently in a low voice if I was cold. I see him like this. The look could not help but some touched, looked up and frownsy looking at him. Zhang, really the fourth brother or heart take care about me? Hearing these words, Dai Lin hurriedly hugged the person tightly in his arms with heartache, reprimanding softly. What a fool! Why didn't you let the driver send? Since he took the initiative to mention it, I directly climbed up the pole, pointing and cursing, as if someone did not allow the driver to send me. Dai Lin knows that this matter is his own disadvantage, but inevitably some angry heartache. Do not let the driver descend you. Do not know how to take a taxi. But Dai Lin did not expect the next second. I saw me whispered tentatively open, remember, as if someone freeze my credit card and bank card it. When I saw his face, I couldn't help but turn my back and sneak a smile. Regretful, guilty, let's see if you're still angry. I reprimanded in a small voice. If that was the case, it would be about midnight before I could walk back. Dai Lin lowered his head and frowned, able to avoid some uneasiness of conscience. Seeing this look on his face, I was finally relieved in my heart. I should be considered to have passed the test, and then relaxed, leaning in his arms and closed his eyes. When I heard this, I obediently raised my head and took a small sip of the warm water in the cup, moistening my parched throat. Dai Lin heard this and are very touched. He tenderly raised his hand, gently touched my cheek. If I tossed myself ill, then he slowly approached to people forehead against each other. Cheeks cannot help but some blush. Then see how I clean up you. Just when the two people are in love, the maid came up and reopened his mouth to remind, Sir, the water is now put away. The two people came back to their senses. Hearing this, Dai Lin wrapped his big hand around, stood up and looked down at me. Then let's go now. You quickly go and have a good bath. Then he personally carried the person to the upstairs bathroom and put me down again with gentle movements like holding a small child. But my attention wasn't on the bath at all. I was looking forward to the gift and looked up at Dai Lin. Open the gift first. Hearing this, Dai Lin smiled a little dotingly, reached out and took the gift box, carefully pulling open the bow on the top. With an expectant face, he opened the box and lowered his head to look at the gift. And there was a book inside, the title of which was Pride and Prejudice. I looked a little nervous, reached out and grabbed the blanket on the body, lowered his head and opened his mouth to explain before the book was torn. So I bought another one because of the many years of maritime special forces missions, experiencing too much life and death. So the fourth brother fell into a very serious post-war stress disorder. He often slept uneasily at night, but by chance, once I read the fourth brother even fell asleep peacefully. But who would have thought that this habit would remain until 2 years ago, when that man tore up the book, and they had a terrible time. So I tried my best to make up for it, and raised my head to look at Dai Lin, and apologized to him seriously. It was my fault that time. Can you forgive me? Dai Lin heard my heartfelt words, lowered his head, inwardly very touched, raised his hand and slowly stroked the cover of the book, softly said, Good. I couldn't help but freeze for a moment when I heard this, and after quickly reacting, my heart was very joyful. It was really great. So I complained to him in order to find the exact same book, but ran to many bookstores. In the end, I found it in the bookstore storehouse. Shouldn't I be rewarded? Dai Lin La asked with an agnostic smile. What do you want? When Dai Lin heard this, he lowered his head with a serious look and slowly approached. I looked up at him expectantly, but I didn't expect the next second. He suddenly stretched out his hand, gently touched the corner of my eye, then straightened up. Dai Lin hadn't said a word, just silently staring at my lips, unable to help but be a little stunned. Seeing him like this, I felt that I might have been too hasty. I waved my hand shyly. I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously. But I didn't think that Dai Lin suddenly lowered his body and came closer. I was a little stunned and raised my head, blushing to look at him. My heart was so nervous that my heart was about to thump out. I closed my eyes tightly, waiting for the kiss to come. I felt this touch and couldn't help but raise my head in a bit of a daze, staring wide-eyed in confusion. This is not what I thought it would be like. But Dai Lin has long since escaped and turned around, walking towards the bathroom door. Before leaving, he also did not forget to remind me to be careful not to dip the wound in water. I raised my hand and gently touched my nose. 'Cause I guess kissing the forehead and face is affection. Kissing the lips is love. But what is the meaning of kissing the nose? The whole person is very bright. I'm very satisfied with my life, joyfully thinking about fourth brother's reaction. Your little goblin is here. Soon came to the door of Dai Lin's room, gently knocked on the door, stood outside patiently waiting for the prey to take the bait. After a while, Emperor Ling, wearing a black bathrobe, casually opened the door to the room to look at the person. Expressionless, asked something. Looking at this outfit of Dai Lin, so handsome that his mouth is going to flow out. What kind of sexy and beautiful man is this that causes people to commit crimes? I saw this attitude of his, pretending to look aggrieved, then reached out my hand and gently tugged on his sleeve. Is not it not a happy welcome, mate? Looking at the figure of this person entering the house, provocatively spat out his tongue, still pulling the clothes up. One is obviously deliberately giving him a look. After tidying myself up, I carefully stepped inside the room. On the small coffee table facing the door, there was the Pride and Prejudice book I had given him. He must have been waiting for me, smelling the faint fragrance emanating from the room. I was stunned in place, looking at this familiar scene. Memories instantly flooded my mind. Once upon a time, this is where I studied for my fourth brother. The old days are still fresh in my mind. Dai Lin didn't know what I was thinking at the moment. He just poured a cup of warm water, with a lowered head and a serious look, and Saturday down on the sofa. He just drank a mouthful of warm water before washing his hair, then noticed my complexion, looked up suspiciously and asked, "What's wrong?" I snapped back to my senses. The expression seriously recalled. I seemed to have read the chapter before. Unexpectedly, Dai Lin blurted out that it was the 33rd chapter. Seeing this, Dai Lin quickly reached out and took the book, thoughtfully rubbed my wrist, carefully examined the injury. It's still not healed yet, so he offered to hold the book for me, and I saw that he was facing me. It was impossible to read. I couldn't even see it. Suddenly, a brilliant idea flashed in my mind. I could use this opportunity to bring the distance between the two people closer. Then I boldly leaned in close to Dai Lin, leaning my upper body against his chest, and suggested, "Then I'll lie down with fourth brother and read it together." I gently leaned back and tightly pressed against his chest, but my face couldn't help but blush slightly. Dai Lin looked down at the person in his arms, his heart constantly thumping. He was about to be unable to restrain his feelings. I didn't ask why, just obediently read it again. After reading, some puzzled sideways had to look at the person beside me, but I quickly figured out, are these words exactly what I wanted to say to fourth brother? The two people looked at each other with deep affection. Dai Lin could not suppress his inner emotions, wanting to speak now, even if it's just lines from a book. It's good to hear you say you love me. I don't know how long it took. Neither of them said anything. Everything around them became blurred and distant, leaving only the sound of their heartbeats, along with the silent night. Dai Lin slowly closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Dreams were like soft ribbons, gently wrapping around him. Then I raised my hand and gently stroked his cheek, but I was satisfied to see fourth brother's sleeping face after a long time. So I quietly left the room and closed the curtains with my hand. The voice was gentle and fond. Good night and sweet dreams, my big wooden head. I tucked the man in and turned to leave the room. Confident man immediately followed the catering. Not good intention to open a mouth to insult me. Everyone is still ready to give you a memorial service. The pothead fat man then turned his nostrils on me. What do you know? That's just hype. Are you really serious? Confident man really said more and more confident, and said to give me a suggestion. Next time you will live broadcast suicide on Weibo. That attention will certainly be high. The crowd started to laugh, but I didn't care what they thought. I just ruffled my hair and ignored it. At this time, the department of flowers slowly walking towards me, until after touching the piano, which violently stopped in his footsteps. She is known as the most beautiful flower of the piano department, Shin Ruolon. I didn't expect her to spit obscenities and order me to get out of the way. Suddenly, I felt a sense of displeasure. She was a former underling, but also dared to be arrogant in front of me, so I easily crossed my waist with one hand and looked at her with an extremely flat expression. Why should I let you take my place? Shenro Alon, on the other hand, frowned slightly and looked at me with a complicated gaze. A punk who only knows to tigers doesn't deserve to use the practice room yet. Embarrassed, toes digging into the ground at this point. It seems like he's that traveler doing it again. These 2 years I am in the school is already infamous. The pale-headed beauty stared at me intently. We are all are going to a performance, so don't waste your resources here. I noticed the word performance, presumably the famous pianist Anthony. If I can perform with him on the same stage, won't it be easy to wash away the stains? I'm going to try out Mariko. When is the audition? Why wasn't I notified? At this time, the people in the auditorium have taken their seats, looking forward to hearing the more beautiful sound of the piano. Shen Ruolong confidently danced her fingers. A beautiful and gentle sound resounded throughout the auditorium. Several tutors under the stage quietly nodded their heads, and then smiled with satisfaction and appreciation. The female tutor quietly approached Anthony's ear. Shen Ruolong was the most outstanding student in the piano department, and had won several awards. Her fingers danced on the keyboard, seemingly agile and lively. Super difficult level tunes were played by her. Anthony also squinted his eyes in satisfaction. This winter without snow was a test of skill, and Miss Shen performed very well. She bowed politely and graciously, but inwardly she was secretly swearing. The winner of this audition is none other than me. Mr. Anthony suddenly looked at the list in his hand, his tone mixed with some doubt. There are no other students. I walked confidently and calmly to the piano, and as if I had thought of something, I suddenly turned to face the crowd below me. The crowd below the stage laughed loudly at me. Are you that one-fingered piano demon? Even the tutor doesn't believe me. Aren't you ashamed enough? I blinked innocently. This audition is open to all interested parties. So what's wrong with me coming? I laughed happily. I'm going to keep you in suspense for a while, because my performance is very special, so please enjoy it first. My tutor was already slapping the table in anger. His good manners disappeared and he shouted at me to get off the stage. Though I didn't care for the insults, my fingers still stuttered slightly. The headmaster threw her a cold look. Teacher Song, if you say another word, you're the one who'll be out of here. I secretly spat out my little tongue on the stage, humming softly in my heart. Let you target me at every turn. I was really scolded. Anthony saw that things had been resolved off stage, so he reached out his hand again and signaled for me to continue playing. I slowly Saturday down in the eyes of the crowd. My own thoughts had quietly formed. I quietly closed my eyes tightly to hide the little nervousness I felt inside, and then let out a secret sigh of relief. Then my tune began to change. My hands crossed quickly and I seemed to form a shadow in the air. At this moment, I was totally immersed in these tones, proving to them that I was not a one-finger pianist. And the jeers of the crowd were fading away. Anthony was so engrossed in the moment. My melodious tunes were flowing in his ears. My small white hands kept exchanging, and my long fingers pressed rapidly and rhythmically. Anthony's eyes widened violently. His blue pupils seemed to be overflowing with shock. It was as if he saw two tigers walking proudly in the snow. Until the last note fell, Anthony stood up and applauded me and said that this piece was the most creative. The crowd applauded with great admiration, and a line of sight looked me up and down. Then they whispered, I didn't expect June Light to be so good. I had expected this result, and I wasn't proud of what I saw. Shamroll on under the stage was very unconvinced, a pair of jealous eyes staring at me. When did she regain her memories? I didn't expect it to be Wang Fushuing, the schoolgrass of the music academy. He walked towards the front a little out of breath, with a few drops of sweat hanging on his forehead, but I violently frowned. I didn't go to find you, but you send yourself to the door. He grabbed my wrist. His mouth kept talking about how much he missed me. I just looked up at him with this disgusting face. I instantly narrowed my eyes slightly. Just this refreshed look of his. Do you really think I'm that stupid? So I instantly got a plan and pretended to be touched as I looked at him. I'm sorry for making you worry. Do you really love me that much? Only to see the man swore to me promise. There is no one in this world who loves you more than me. Immediately after I quietly read cheeks, the voice but no ringing. Then we get married. Huan Fushuing was shocked and exclaimed. His deep eyes stared at me dead on. But you're still in school, and you're not old enough to get married. I pretended to be sad and pulled my hand out, and my eyes overflowed with sadness. Don't you want to? The man's pupils violently enlarged. A few million to study abroad. Just when his own application to study abroad encountered difficulties, he pretended to look at me without thinking. This little stupid girl is really a stupid thing. Then pretend to agree to get married and get rid of her after going abroad. He quickly thought through the benefits and then grabbed me by the arm. Actually, there was a reason why I didn't agree. I'm afraid I can't give you the future you want. If you're not afraid to suffer, then of course I'm willing to. I secretly hooked a smile. This man really took the bait. All that effort in pursuing the traveler before, wasn't it just to cheat him out of his money? Dai Lin was dressed in a nautical uniform and Saturday very steadily in the car. At this time, the radio station of the Music Academy quietly rang out. I am Jun Qing. Huan Fushuin is going to propose to me soon. I hope everyone will give us a witness. People in the academy said they were all stunned. Is this thing really true or not? But let's go out and listen to it. At this moment, a ball of anger welled up inside Dai Lin. He looked at the driver angrily, then coldly reminded him to drive. He put the bracelet on my hand, but his expression revealed a touch of tenderness. I'll give you my heart. Will Xiao Qing marry me? I carefully measured the chain on my wrist. Really worthy of being a scumman. Just this plastic product is still carried for many years. But I still have to do my play before I reply to you. You have to answer my 3 questions first. Schoolmaster Huang of course said yes. So I quickly put forward the first question. How much money you take from me before and after? Huang Fushuin suddenly sweated like a pig. His eyes looked at me expectantly. This counts me as I borrowed it. I will return it to you later. I asked the second question. You chased me at the same time. Also chasing the singing department of Tiana, right? Only to see his gaze a little evasive. Directly avoiding my blazing gaze. I was only helping her write psalms. I definitely wasn't chasing her. I suddenly took out a few photos in my hand and gave all this evidence to myself to check out. I didn't care how surprised he was, and directly threw the photos at his head. What's the matter with these photos? I was getting more and more angry. My skinny body suddenly exploded with a burst of energy and even slapped him out of the room. Huang Fushuin covered his injured cheek. One side of his nose suddenly just crooked over. I lightly shook up the feast in my hand, gritted my teeth and apologized to him. I'm so sorry. I've knocked your carefully made nose askew. It's time to wrap up this farce. So I make a sharp turn. He is now in the broadcasting room. Other students who have been cheated, if necessary, can come over to take revenge. Just see Huan Fushuin holding one side of the nose. But inside is incomparable panic. This microphone is actually open state. Such a wonderful gossip. Of course, you have to share with everyone. Otherwise, how can you let everyone know the nature of you this scum? But there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. I've already sent an email to Columbia University. I don't care about the death of the scum. Notify them that your thesis is plagiarism. I believe you will receive the notice of withdrawal soon. At this time, Huang Fushuin couldn't care about the crooked nose. His big hand clenched his fist tightly. It seems to be a feast to smash at me. Crossing back to June Light is no longer the previous June Light. I certainly is a light dodge. Then I lifted my long leg, and without giving him any chance to react, I kicked him directly. A wail rang out in the campus, causing the crowd to look up continuously. I walked on the campus with satisfaction. The evil anger in my heart was finally exhaled. Just thinking about this makes me excited for no reason. However, I just punched the scumbag too hard, so now my wrist hurts from the after effects. I do not care about such small details. I was planning to take a taxi home, but in front of me suddenly appeared a sedate luxury car.